joined by Rick Blackwell. J.D. Hayworth welcoming you back to America's Forum. And we're going to call in now a filmmaker who is also the co-author of a new book. His name is Jason Jones, and the name of his book is The Race to Save Our Century: 5 Core Principles to Promote Peace, Freedom, and a Culture of Life. Jason Jones, welcome to America's Forum. It's good to have you here today, sir.
Aloha, JD. Thanks for having me on.
You bet, and you do. You can say aloha since you're Skyping in from Hawaii. We appreciate that, Jason.
Yeah.
And as you think back about this, both as a filmmaker and as a co-author, what prompted you to write the book?
You know, the book really was birthed out of 3 experiences I had. First, as a young man at 16 years old, actually 2 days before my 17th birthday, my high school girlfriend told me she was pregnant, and so we conspired that I would drop out of school and join the Army, and that's what I did. And while I was in basic training, her father had forced her to have an abortion. And the other experience was as a young soldier, as a young infantryman, I had witnessed tragedies. And so those combined really impressed upon me that the loss of a respect for the sanctity of the human person was causing so much sorrow around the world.
So in terms of saving the century, identify those core principles for us, if you would, please, sir.
Yeah, well, there are 5 principles that when you look at the 20th century, the great democides, genocides, and wars had to obliterate before that they could happen. And they were, 1, the foundation is the incomparable dignity and beauty of the human person. And that's what makes Western civilization unique. 2 is the transcendent moral order, or the idea that there is a law above the laws of man. 3 is subsidiarity, the idea that an institution, or the further an institution is from a person, the weaker that institution should be, and that we should have as many natural institutions between the human person and the state. 4 is the humane economy. That's the idea that a just social order is grounded in private property rights set within the commonwealth of the family. And 5 is the idea that our personal actions should correspond to the common good.
Jason, really the core of the book is making sure we don't duplicate the tragedies in history, the Holocaust, communism. And you say the wars actually of the 20th century could happen again unless we recommit to these fundamental moral truths. So I want to ask you, how do we preserve human rights based on this moral code?
Well, you know, this is where I say there's the great opportunity of abortion. And what do I mean by that? The abortion debate gives us it's an objective milestone that we should seek full legal protection for the human person from the moment of their biological beginning through natural death. And I think that a lot of Republican candidates will treat abortion as a social issue. Ben Carson called it a barnacle on the ship of state. But we really need to come to understand that the struggle for full legal protection for the human person, the struggle for the protection of the child in the womb, is really the core of the race to save our century. If we continue to deny legal protection for the most vulnerable members of the human family, if we continue to deny the incomparable dignity, beauty, and worth of the human person, we will see our civilization collapse into tyranny, war, and democide for the second century in a row.
Jason, are you heartened by the fact that we take a look at polling, and especially polling from the younger demographic, and there are pro-life majorities now to the question of what in the 70s was characterized as, quote, pro-choice? We're actually seeing a change now for people standing up for life. Is that something positive?
No, we see 76% of those under 30 consider themselves pro-life in a recent Gallup poll. I work in the entertainment industry that, of course, is very liberal, is thought to be very progressive. But all of my friends are pro-life. I've had some of the biggest producers and actors in Hollywood come up to me and take me aside and thank me for speaking out for the preborn. So I think there's going to be a radical, dramatic shift in how our country treats abortion. And I do believe that we will see full legal protection for the human person in the next 10 to 15 years.
Well, that is a hopeful note indeed. I'm just kind of curious, Jason, as a filmmaker and an author, how do you combine those 2 disciplines? You got 20 seconds to answer.
You know, the book really, I started writing as an undergraduate at the University of Hawaii almost 20 years ago. And that's when I really became convinced that I wanted to use my life to promote human dignity. So if you look at my films, from Bella to Crescendo, which I recently produced with Patty Millett, who's the mother of Justin Bieber, to The Stoning of Soraya M., all of these films share the same line of gesture, which is the intrinsic dignity and beauty of the human person. And that's what I'm trying to communicate in the book as well.
Fair enough. Jason Jones, we appreciate you Skyping in mighty early out in Hawaii this morning. We sure do appreciate it.
Well, I'm heading to the beach. Thanks, you guys.
All right, pal. Thanks a bunch. Let's take a look as we talk about a fight to save the next century. Let's look back in our history to another hopeful sign of the past. He was born into slavery but escaped and spent his life fighting for justice and equality. The Frederick Douglass House in Washington, D.C. is this morning's American Place.
Perched minutes away from the United States Capitol sits stately Cedar Hill, purchased in 1877 by famous abolitionist Frederick Douglass. After freeing himself from slavery, he became a minister of African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church. Encouraged by his Christian faith and gifted as an orator and writer, Douglass spent decades seeking to free all slaves. During the Civil War, Douglass became a friend and advisor to Abraham Lincoln, who Douglass said was the greatest president. Visitors will find Lincoln's favorite walking stick resting in the house, a gift of appreciation from Lincoln's widow, Mary. Douglass expanded the home's original 14 rooms to 21, including a 2-story library. He needed a home close to official Washington because Republican President Rutherford B. Hayes appointed him Marshal of the District of Columbia, marking the first time an African American won Senate approval for a federal appointment. But despite all of Douglass's success, life was a constant struggle. Outside Cedar Hill sits what was known as the Growlery, so called because this one-room building was a respite for Douglass to growl and sort out the pressures of the day. Douglass was a vocal and prominent member of Washington society, championing African American and women's suffrage. His home often served as a gathering spot for other pioneers of justice and equality before the law. "I would unite with anybody to do right and with nobody to do wrong," Douglass famously said. A visitor gazing upon the spectacular views of Washington, D.C. could say this special man in this special home had helped build a mighty and free nation. I'm Lucy Celia, and this is An American Place on Newsmax TV.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Rick Blackwell in the news. ISIS tells supporters to slaughter American troops and their families. Now, the latest intelligence report advises members of the military and their loved ones to be careful about what they post online amid fears that terrorists could use that information to find them. Relatives of the Dallas Ebola patient say they don't know what to do with the sheets and towels he used. A cleaning crew that was supposed to sanitize the residence was turned away for not having the proper permits. President Obama tells the Congressional Hispanic Caucus that he plans to take executive action on immigration reform sometime between midterm elections and the end of the year. And hackers launch a cyber attack on JP Morgan and steal personal information from 83 million customers. The breach occurred in July, and of course, it will affect many people as far as that breach. I'm Rick Blackwell. More news coming up in a half hour right here on Newsmax TV.